Oh, now I'm going live. Oh, okay. Okay. It's your boy Livewire, and I am back in the motherfucking building. I'm right now. I just got some gameplay of Dishonored on because I'm trying to figure out this OBS shit. Um, I have to use it for work anyway, so I'm like, fuck it. Why not fuck around with it a little bit on my semi free time in order to you know, get better at using it. But anyway, topic at hand. Third place is the best position for Xbox and all its consumers. It it's kind of true. It's sad to say, but it's kind of true. People ask, well, why? When we won't aim for first? Well, look, Xbox is in a very I say Microsoft in general, are in a very special position. Microsoft can't afford to be a monopoly. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. They cannot afford to be a monopoly. Anytime a company with that much power controls too many things, people, tend to have a raised eyebrow and more concern on, what's going on, and they try to disband the company, similar to what happened with Microsoft in the past when they basically, because they were a monopoly, Apple had fallen by the wayside. They literally had to fund Apple's resurgence to build competition so they could stay together as a company. Look at it as think of it as I don't know if y'all have seen this movie Mastermind, but in Mastermind, the movie, he basically kills the equivalent of Superman, right? He's supposed to be like the super evil villain, and he kills Superman. But the thing is once your nemesis is gone, and there's nothing else to really fight for. All that shit that you were doing, or all the, you know, all this, progress that you were trying to make is kind of for naught because there's nothing to compete against. I mean, I would look at it as no different than, like sports. When there's no competition, the one team is above all. It makes everything boring, unfortunately. And Microsoft recognizes that, and the resurgence of PlayStation and Nintendo is a good thing for Microsoft as a whole. It's better for them to sit in third. It brings less questions on what they want to do, what they can do, what they're able to do. The gamers win everything because Microsoft, one, they're coming out with better services, which therefore pushes the other companies to come out with better services on top of Google and Apple and whomever else is trying to get into the streaming aspect of gaming, or the subscription aspect of gaming. So gaming as a whole, there's just more options, which, hey man, I don't see any problem with. I find that options are always great. Um, and I've never been someone who's uh, looked at gaming more than, it's one of my favorite pastimes. Like, as you get older, I would say this, especially when it comes to games I've played in the past versus now, our tastes change. They just do. I mean, that's just human evolution. It doesn't mean that what you liked in the past is now complete trash, and now something else is taking its spot. It's not necessarily that. Sometimes it's just like some things just come around full circle, right? When I was younger, I was big on action platformers, Mario, Sonic, etc., etc. A lot of 2D side scrollers. Now, granted, that's really all we had back in the Nintendo and Sega Genesis days. But as gaming evolved and you got 3D games came along, then the evolution from just simple 3D games became like, you got the shooters that came in, and then you had the open world games that came in. Um, and for a long time, I was more of a big open world game. Not that linear games aren't fun, because they are, but I was very much I gotta play the next Grand Theft Auto or Saints Row or something equivalent to that. That was very much my thing until that became, like kind of like a heavy aspect of what was in like this generation. Well, the late last generation, and then until now, like it feels like we have so many open world games that it would be more refreshing to have more linear games of the likes of a Dead Space, a Bioshock, something along those lines. You know, semi open world, but still very linear. And I just find that our tastes as gamers, that shit changes, man. I remember I used to basically only play 2K and the big multiplats. Like 2K was my every game I played all the time because that's what me and my cousin played, and we used to go at it constantly. Knicks versus Nets, all the time. Every once in a while, we'll switch it up, play with some other teams, but then we go back to Knicks versus Nets until like Halo came out, and then we'll play Halo, and then we'll play that until we beat it, and then we go to multiplayer and get washed, and then we'll go back to fucking 2K and then battle it out over there. And then when the Gears came out, it'd be the same thing. It's like the cycle of when the big exclusives come out, we play those, we beat them, then we jump on the multiplayer, we get ragged for a little bit, and then we go back to what we love to play at that time, which was 2K. That's is what it is. Then the same thing for like the Red Deads and the Grand Theft Autos. Like that was just the cycle of how I gamed. And then you run across those single player gems, the Batmans, the Assassin's Creeds at the time, Splinter Cells. Even though the Splinter Cells did have multiplayer later on, and again we would play those for a bit and then move on to the next. But I think that our my taste has always evolved. Over time. I would say I was always willing to try something new if what the game was offering interests me as far as the character or the subject matter. Right, something in the game has to interest me. All right. I would say this generation, more so than any, is the first time that I've actually played games that I otherwise would not have if it wasn't due to strong recommendations from other gamers. Whether or not I believe those recommendations to be true on my own reconnaissance is something else, but I would just take, all right, this is your word for it. I play it, and then at that point, I would say, okay, this game is like great, amazing, good, etc., etc. But I would say this gen, it's been interesting. It's a lot of ups and downs and kind of side steps. I wouldn't say full step forwards. Some games definitely yes. Others kind of just buck the trend of staying safe can be. And then some are disappointing, and that's a thing as well. But at the end of the day, regardless, I definitely appreciated everything I played, even the stuff that I was just like, it's cool, and it's not something I'm necessarily gonna play over and over again, just because my time is different. Um, and that's a big thing, man. I mean, when you have a lot of time available to you for gaming, your your idea of what is acceptable as a game is very different than somebody whose time is extremely limited Uh, so what they and it also comes down to money too. You know, if I can afford multiple games, you know, I'm going to be less harsh on a game because I don't, I'm able to afford the games and get as many games as I want. So I'm not going to be giving like these extreme, like, oh, like this game Days Gone is a 3 or some shit like that because it didn't live up to something. Like I'm not going to do that, but I can see how somebody whose budget is tight, and then the game doesn't live up to what they feel it should have lived up to, kind of giving these extremely harsh scores. Not that I necessarily agree with them, but I can understand why, because at the end of the day, it's all about, like, these reviews are all about how a person feels about a certain game. It's not really based on fact at all. The only facts are that you could look at the game, and even then, you could look at a game. The only thing you could say is fact is this game is sharper than that game. Like, that's it. You only can say the resolution is better and the frame rate is better. Those are the only facts. But the art style being more appealing, one game being more appealing than another, those are all opinions. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much a motherfucker say this looks better than that. It's a fucking opinion, you know. You could say God of War looks better than Red Dead, or Red Dead looks better than God of War. It's a fucking opinion. It doesn't, because both motherfuckers are right. It looks best to you. If God of War looks better, then it looks better to you. If Red Dead looks better, then it looks better to you. Is really what it comes down to. I mean, a lot of these arguments people have is really just arguments over their opinions of what they like, which, it's kind of ridiculous, man. I look at it. The console wars are funny to have, but when people get way too serious over it, that's where it's kind of like, all right, y'all kind of bugging, yo. Because I at the end of the day, I look at it as like, a gay dude arguing with a straight dude over what's better, dick or pussy. Like, bro, it's like, if you gay, obviously you like what you like. If you straight, you like what you like. You're never gonna convince the other person to like what you like, and that's okay. I don't understand why people can't agree to disagree. It's like, well, if you don't like what I like, then you must be shit. You're dumb. You're retarded. Blah blah blah. It's like, bro, golly, man, take a chill pill, bro. It ain't that serious. All right, it ain't that serious. I just feel that the whole bash agenda it was very strong this generation. And not that it hasn't been stronger other generations, but I just felt like, people feel if you don't see what they see and like what they like, then somehow, you just, if you falling out of line of what they feel should be, this rigid structure of, well, these games are good and those games are trash, then, somehow you're a corporate slave fanboy, right? Now, they always have exceptions to the rule, which is very interesting, right? You have critics that are currently bashing Ghost Recon, I forget Breakpoint. And there are gamers coming out saying, I don't know what they're talking about. This game is still pretty good, and blah, blah, blah. Now, it's funny how people say that when it's a game they like, but when it's a game they don't like or they don't care about, then the critics are totally justified for what they're saying. And to be honest, that's the real bullshit, man. That's the real bullshit. Because most of the people that sit back and judge and say, well, the critics are right and this game is shit and blah, blah, blah. Number one, they haven't played that game. And they have no interest in playing the game. And they'll tell you how much this game has quality or doesn't have quality based on that. Like, I don't know how many times I've heard people say Crackdown is shit, never played the game. I'm like, bro, you never played the game, yet you say it's shit. You never, and I'm not saying you have to beat the game to know if it's quality or not, but like, you have to at least like to me, for a game to be shit, it has to be fundamentally broken. Like, because anybody can find enjoyment in any game they play. Bro, I'm not a fan of Minecraft, but let me rephrase that. I understand why Minecraft is as big as it is. I do. It's nothing more than virtual Legos, right? And if anybody who was a kid that played with Legos would totally understand that. Now, do I understand that somebody may not have any interest in playing with Legos? Absolutely. But I don't think when people see somebody playing with Legos, they look at them and saying, well, why are you doing that? That's trash. But yet people say that about people playing Minecraft or games that they just don't have any interest in playing. That's always the funniest thing to me. It's like people, like, you don't like a certain thing, so therefore that thing is trash. Like, I don't understand why people like RPGs like, Pokemon, because turn based, and you gotta read all the dialogue. I mean, similar to Zelda, because I'm playing Zelda currently right now. If it wasn't for the gameplay, I would not like this game. Zelda's dialogue, number one, I don't read that shit at all, because I don't give a fuck about none of them story bits. I just want to play the game and beat the game. That's all I care about. I don't care about the fish man that jumps in the water and is a prince in charge with the king's guard or some fishtopia. I don't care. I just play the game because I like the puzzles. The gameplay's solid, and that's it. That's all I give a fuck about Zelda for. But that story is shit to me, but I can understand why certain people do like that game and do like the story. Basically, my friend's mom, she's a huge Zelda fan, and she loves reading all the nooks and crannies of those games. She just does. That's her thing, I'm gonna tell her she's wrong. She shouldn't like it. I mean, who the fuck? Like, I just never understand that mindset. Like, who the fuck are you to tell somebody what they can like or not like? Like, bro, like, I don't care for manga, but that doesn't mean the shit shouldn't exist. Like, that mentality is just, like, to me, is extremely bothersome. Like, I can't understand for the life of me why motherfuckers feel the need to tell people what they should like. That shit doesn't make any sense. Like, to me personally, I didn't think God of War was that great of a game. I thought it was good, but like game of the generation, like, no, not to me. It just wasn't. It just didn't have enough. Like, if you're comparing it to Rise, all right, of course, because it was very limited. Rise had a great story, but aside from that, the game was underwhelming as far as like the gameplay that it really had. Like, yeah, it had certain things that were cool about it, but after a while, the gameplay definitely got boring and repetitive. But to me, God of War's story was just very uninteresting. Like, the Norse mythology, to me personally, is boring. His story with his son is just like underwhelming. I mean, I guess if you grew up in an abusive household and your father treated you like shit, that would make more, like, it would kind of speak to you more. But like, I didn't grow up like that. My dad was cool as shit, so I didn't. Well, my stepfather was cool as shit, but like, I mean, I didn't. That shit wasn't going on in my house. My dad wasn't gonna call me boy and all that bullshit. So like, I don't know, man. That shit didn't appeal to me. I guess the way it appealed to other people that dealt with that shit in their life. But I just thought the game was cool. It was fun. The gameplay was definitely fun. There's nothing bad to say about the game, but how people just bloviate about, oh, this is like mind bending, and I was so emotional. Me personally, I just don't see it. But at the end of the day, I'm not gonna tell somebody else they can't feel that way. Now that's ridiculous. Everybody's allowed to feel how they feel about a game, right? The way certain people felt about God of War, I felt more of that towards Detroit. I just thought Detroit, even with the fact that it didn't have any gameplay, and it was very all you're doing is basically detective work and kindly kind of making choices based on what you think the results will be, and trying to survive the events of the game. I thought it was a good game. I thought it was a great game. It sucked me in longer. Kept me wanting to go back. I think Detroit was probably the second game I beat. I beat Spider-Man first. Then I started God of War and Uncharted first. Then I started Detroit. Then I was like, oh man, this Detroit shit is hot. So I wound up beating that, and then I think I came back and beat Uncharted after that. And then after Uncharted, I beat God of War, and then I beat Lost Legacy, and then I beat what I beat I think what's up The Order, and after The Order, I beat Ratchet and Clank. I'm trying to remember what the fuck else did I beat. I played Bloodborne, but I did not like that game. This shit was just like, for me to play a game that's that like punishing and difficult. I gotta be interested in in playing it. Like, to me, it wasn't worth the abuse. Like if I'm gonna get cussed out by a fucking bitch that is a pain in the ass and all that shit, she better be bad as hell and have some bomb ass pussy. And that's not what, to me, Bloodborne didn't have that. There was nothing keeping me there to really wanting to beat the game. It just, I'm not a fan of the super dark, like, goth anime type. Like, I just don't give a shit about it. So for me, it wasn't like something that I really cared about. But again, it's not a game I would say is trash. It's just not a game for me. But I would say this, man. With this generation, it's a lot of good things that came. Especially from Microsoft being in third place. You're talking about, you got their services have tremendously increased. You got Game Pass, which I don't give a fuck where you stand on Game Pass. It's a great service. Now, some people say, oh, it promotes mediocrity and all that bullshit. I'm like, to me, this is what I don't understand. Nobody's going to buy a service that is considered to be mediocre. Understand that. Even if Game Pass started off as mediocre, it cannot continue to be mediocre and see success. It's impossible. It's impossible, because people will stop using it. Think about what happened to PlayStation Now. PlayStation Now started off as an overpriced, mediocre service. And what happened? People did not use it. It wasn't until Game Pass came in, put games day and date, Microsoft's own IPs at a reasonable price, and showed that there's money to be made off of this, that Sony finally has turned some of their stuff around with PlayStation Now. Now, for newcomers to PlayStation, I think it's a quality service. For people that have been there since the beginning, not so much, because they don't have any games in there that people haven't already played, or already, or they can just get them, cheaper at this point for like one or two games. It's not a quality service as much as Game Pass is, until they start putting their stuff day and date. Now, whether or not they put it day and date, 3 months down the line, whatever, people could argue on which is the best method of doing it. That's fine. But the fact remains that, when Game Pass came out, it changed the way in which people perceived subscription services, because it's not the first one to do it. I mean, you still have GameFly. I mean, you still have it that provides a service for renting games, and that's another one that Microsoft is dipping into their pocket with Game Pass. People kind of forget that those services exist. I mean, I don't know how they advertise a lot, but people kind of forget that shit is there. Like, you gotta. I think that people. I mean, obviously, people that complain about Game Pass have an agenda. Understood. I think that people that push the whole games are going to continue to be mediocre for Game Pass. I think they fail to realize what Microsoft really had to go through in order to get into the position of not being able to put out the type of exclusives that they want. Like, that shit doesn't happen overnight. That shit is something that happens over time, and there's multiple. Like, what can I compare it to? It's almost like when you see somebody going through a serious tragedy, right? And then has a mental breakdown, right? People don't always go into those dark places based off of one incident. It's typically something that happens through multiple events, traumatic events over time. Whether or not it's shit that was of their own doing or not, that's typically what happens before somebody has a breakdown, right? And Microsoft was kind of going through that breakdown. PlayStation went through a similar breakdown in the PS3 era. The only difference between the PS3's breakdown and Xbox's breakdown is Xbox did not have the studios in hand to rectify its issues the way PlayStation did. PlayStation had its studios in hand since the PS2 era, right? Xbox didn't. They basically didn't start getting studios until they realized they could no longer depend on third party. They got lucky in the 360 era. That's a fact. Because a lot of shit that happened in the 360 era could have turned out bad and ended up, bad for them if Mass Effect was a flop, if BioShock was a flop. Crackdown, the first Crackdown, is a solid game, and that shit sold like 3 million, but at the same time, it's not like it was like some, mind-blowing thing, vastly better back in the day than it was for Crackdown 3. That's not the case. The thing was, Crackdown 3 sold as many as it did because what? It was bundled with the Halo demo or beta, Halo 3 beta, and they had far more users during that era in the 360 era than they did with the Xbox One. It just is what it is. Regardless of how people want to talk about it, if you have more consumers of your product, you're going to sell more games. I mean, at least that's what makes the most sense, right? If you got more consumers, you're going to sell more games. That's how it is. I don't see why that should be like a big surprise to people. Like, people act like, oh my gosh, PlayStation 1, another NPD for this game or whatever game. Because at this point, they just have too many consumers to really have a game that fails. Like, the only games that are really gonna not kind of get much past the 2 million mark for sales are games like a Detroit. Games that aren't heavy gameplay, but just story based. But as long as it follows the formula of, look, it's an action game, whether or not it's great or whatever, that doesn't matter. It's like, as long as it's an action game and it looks good, PlayStation is going to sell that shit. I did a Dead Stranding. As terrible as that game looks, and that shit looks boring, it's going to sell at least 5 million. At least. And that's even with the chutes and ladders and the pissing on babies, all that shit. It's still going to sell 5 million because at this point it has too many users where all they got to do is put out a decent trailer. People aren't going to research the trailer and see how many times he pisses on that baby. They're not going to do that. They're just going to see the trailer and be like, oh, you know, they'll say from the maker of Metal Gear Solid. And people be like, oh, I kind of like Metal Gear Solid. Even though most of the motherfuckers that bought Metal Gear Solid 5 didn't even beat that shit. But that's besides the point. You know, but the games are going to sell. I mean, that's kind of how it was for Microsoft. I mean, think about it. Halo Wars, I believe that shit also sold 2 or 3 million. The first one. You know, it's an RTS. It's not a big, you know, it's not a lot of people that are like huge fans of RTS on console. And we're just talking about console. I'm not talking about PC. You know, it's just not that type of game that people are like a huge fan of. You know, but it was a Halo game for one, and there's a lot of people that were on 360 at the time. It is what it is. But yeah, man. So, but the future is gonna be bright. I'll tell you this. Xbox is good because, you know, they're part of Microsoft. Microsoft is currently doing their thing. You know, the Surface team, which also works on the console, they are killing it right now with the devices that they're bringing out both this year and next year. You know, and I believe that the Scarlett is going to be another, you know, great product, even obviously more robust than the X is currently. And then they'll have the software to go along with it. And I believe they also learned from a lot of their mistakes, you know, from the previous gen. So, you know, the gamers are going to benefit. At the end of the day, the gamers are going to benefit. Now, all I care about is, you know, I mean, shit, all my games are pretty much paid for. I got Game Pass, so I don't have to buy shit. All I got to do is get the console. Whether that's 500, 600, all I got to do is get the console, and then I can play everything. And then I just, you know, pay for my multiplats, and that's it. You know, that's what's up for me, man. But, you know, the negativity, I'm not listening to none of that shit. Like, the motherfuckers will just be on their shit for whatever reason. It sells. I get it. It sells. It's what you got to do in order to kind of get a YouTube channel. Because you know what the thing is? I understood the trend of why people switch. Like, if you think about it, there were so many Xbox channels at one point. It was congested. It was. You're talking about a smaller fan base, but you're congested with, you know, all these YouTubers coming up being pro Xbox guys. So, you know, at some point people just switched up. You know, be like, you know, I gotta make more money for whatever. I mean, because I think when people started, it wasn't about that. It was just about them liking the game and the console and whatever, right? But then they just turned to, oh, I got to get more money, and that's why they switched up to PlayStation. Because and the only reason why I say that is because a lot of these guys are the same guys that talk about like, oh, well, I root for Xbox, like it's my favorite team, and blah blah blah, and you know. And when they stopped doing the stuff I like, you know, that's when I switched sides and wanted to go to PlayStation. Now, maybe that's the case, right? But rarely do I ever see motherfuckers that are a fan of a team just switch up and be like, I'm gonna jump to the other team. I'm a Giants fan. Giants have stunk for I don't even know how many years. They have straight up stunk. But I'm a Giants fan. I'm still rocking out with the Giants. I might not subject myself to the torture of watching them play, every game. Well, especially prior to Eli leaving. But now that they got Daniel Jones in there, I'm a little bit more interested in watching to see how the games go. But I mean, it's at the end of the day, I'm still a Giants fan. That shit's not gonna change. You're not gonna see me turn around and talk about go Cowboys. Fuck that. I ain't never seen that shit. Or go Eagles. If they win, cool. But I'm not rooting for them motherfuckers. And the same thing for my Nets. I'm a Nets fan too, and everybody knows they was a laughing stock of the NBA for a long time. All of a sudden, one fateful summer, they get Kyrie and Kevin Durant. Granted, Kevin Durant's still hurt, but shit, we got him. He'll be back next year, and then we'll see what they'll do. But hey, man, we lived through no draft picks and a lot of bullshit, and now the team is a lot better. You know what I mean? And I tell my friends all the time, man, I was playing with the Nets when they ain't had nobody. They had nobody and Brook Lopez, and I was still rocking out with them in fucking 2K. That's how I roll. I was like, I'm a fan regardless. Yeah, I'll play the game, and sometimes I'll get my ass whooped because your team is better and whatever. But at the end of the day, this is my team. No different than my boy Bone. 100 to play with the fucking Raiders, no matter how sorry they are and blah, blah, blah. Oh, they suck. He said, fuck it, I'm riding out. This is my team, and I'm riding out. And I respect that shit. You know what I mean? Like, I remember fucking, now, you got people that do that shit, and you got people that switch sides. Like bro, I was beating the dog shit out a lot, Next Gen 720 with the Nets. Because he thought just because he had a better team than I did, that he was a better player. See, the thing is, when you play with a shit team and you're able to hold your own, it's way different. Because look, on a shit team, you gotta play defense and you gotta know how to score. Like they don't give you those lollipop fucking shots where you can get your fucking player just drives the lane and dunks on everybody all the goddamn time, or he can hit threes no matter who the fuck is in his face. They don't give you none of that shit. So you actually got to know how to get open shots, create turnovers. Like, you can't just press the strip button 100 times and automatically he fucking just the guy you're guarding coughs up the ball and you can go the other way. Like, that shit they reserve for the good teams, and the bad teams, those motherfuckers can run into a motherfucker and lose the ball. So, when you run into somebody who actually plays with a bad team on a consistent basis and knows, like, this is, I know how to make these motherfuckers work regardless of how shitty they are. And yeah, I might lose a game here and there, but at the end of the day, if I play with a better team, you ain't got a fucking chance in hell. And fucking who I show? Lemon. I showed Lemon that shit the hard way. Because we was playing, I forget who Lemon had. He had the Lakers. Was it the Lakers? He had the Cavs. I think it was the first time. Yeah, it was like, because I played Zaire first. I trashed him, and then he was talking all that shit. But then a couple of weeks later, I played Lemon, and 100 was gassing him up. So but Lemon's better than Zaire. So I played him with the Nets, and it was a close ass game. And I think we played twice. I think I beat him once, and he beat me twice after that. And he was talking like Lemon does. He's talking hella shit. So I was like, you know what? I'm tired of this shit. And I grabbed the OKC. And Lemon was just like, yo, this some bullshit. And I just swept him like 3 straight games. And he was just like, you know what? Yo, let's go back to play with the mother, with the fucking that you stop changing your team. I was like, all right. But like, the thing is like, bro, when you play with a shit team like that, man, it sharpens your skills, man, because you always at a handicap anyway. So when the time you actually get a team that's decent, that shit is almost like unfair because it's just super easy. Because damn near the computer does half the work for you. I don't know how many times fucking Lemon come down the court. I didn't even try to strip that nigga. He just lost the ball because the computer playing defense. I was like, damn. So this is what it's like. So wait, you ain't got to play defense. You got the computer does all the goddamn work. Damn, this shit was nice. I should play with these motherfuckers more often. Yeah, but that's my little tangent right there. But yeah. So you know, I say next generation, man. It's gonna be bright. It's gonna be bright. I think Microsoft has a great game plan. The thing is, they know what their deficiencies are, and I think that's what's most important. I'm not saying that I think people think that for Xbox to win, Sony must die or fall or fail. I don't believe that shit. I think Xbox going into next generation, even if they're in third place next generation, that shit's fine. That shit does not bother me at all, as long as they're doing what I need them to do, which is create better games and better experiences. That's all I care about. That's all I care about. I don't care about how many consoles they sell. I don't care about how many copies of the games that they sell. All I care about is getting those experiences that I want. That's all I care. On better hardware. That's all I care about. But this is your boy Livewire, and I'm gonna check out this bitch. All right, have a good one. I holla at y'all. Peace.